Hello, my name is Max Enderline, and I am the son-in-law. I'd like to say a few words about Brian. Although this is one of the toughest speeches I can ever make, I feel it is my duty to step up for Brian. And at the same time, try to make people laugh if at all possible, because Brian would want it that way. He was always the jokester. So please don't be afraid to laugh, no matter how hard it may seem to feel that way, for laughter can be the best healing. It is now time for me to step up as the son-in-law, so Brian, I got your back. I'm a very proud person to be a member of Brian's family. Commander Robert Archibald, U.S. Navy. Margaret, my beautiful wife, Hope. I also want to give a shout out to my mom and dad, Bob and Joyce Enderline, all the cousins who came from far states, friends who came from even farther states, and the large amount of friends who have provided a lot of support and comfort to the Archibald family in this time of need. We very much appreciate all that everyone has done in the last few weeks of Brian's life, and will always be very impressed by the level of devotion his friends and family have shown to him while in the hospital. I learned a lot about Brian and his friends over the last 3 weeks, and mostly learned about Katie and Tony and how much they truly loved him and tried to provide him the most comfort of any friends that I have ever witnessed. They helped maintain a bedside vigil in the ICU, and I am sure even the nurses have not seen this level of devotion in quite some time. I'll bet some of the other patients in the ICU were wondering, who is this ladies' man at the end of the ICU? All these pretty women keep going over to his bed. As I stayed in the waiting area, I thought the same exact thing. What a likable guy he truly was. Brian would be the first person to say, I'm no Brad Pitt, but he used to say to my wife at our house at Sunday dinners when he came over by himself, chicks dig me. Even though Brian and I were different people when we first met, we found out we have many similarities. This is really bizarre. Brian, my brother, was born on the exact same day as my little brother Walt. Same year, September 25th, 1964. Both Brian and I have an older sister with the name Lynn. For those of you that don't know this, Hope's middle name is Lynn. Both Hope and Lynn are born in August and are Leos, and they both are strong alpha females. Very strong. In fact, I know she's strong because when Hope gives me the look, if you're a married man, you know what I'm talking about. Both Brian and I have a father who served in the military. Their name is Bob. This can be very confusing around Christmas time because my Christmas cards say Bob A and Bob E, or Dad A and Dad E. Both Brian and I are dearly loved by my wife, Hope, just as she loves both of us. We both try to be funny from time to time, and I think Brian was definitely funnier. However, I will say this, chicks dig me too. True story. Brian tried to keep it a secret during our wedding over 7 years ago that something was wrong, that he was sick. Hope and I enjoyed the most beautiful wedding on the coldest, rainiest day in over 180 days of drought, March 11th, 2006. Many of you in this room were there. We went on our honeymoon to Aruba and came back a very happy newlywed couple, and we are still very happy today. It was after the honeymoon we learned about Brian. That is what Brian was all about. He never wanted any of us, friends or family, to worry too much. One day I attempted to reassure Brian that I was a cancer survivor too, that I had basal cell skin cancer. Some people call this the good cancer. Brian responded to my comment in his usual joking manner, that's not real cancer. You don't know cancer. He always had a way about him to make light of the thing he was battling. However, one day I found out that he got a tattoo, 5% on his arm. I had no idea that the survival rate of those who have his type of stage 4 cancer was 5%. Well, I guess it would not look as cool as Brian if I had a tattoo of 95% on my arm. So As many of you may know, Brian loved to study the history of the U.S. wars, and he had particular interest in World War II and read many books about it. I have experienced a wonderful opportunity to go to Hawaii with the Archibalds to celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary on a cruise ship, to see all the main islands together, to have dinner with the Norwegian captain of the ship visiting us at our dinner table. He honored us with that visit. And we went with Brian to see Pearl Harbor. What a fantastic memory. To see the look on Brian's face, the pride he has for his country, the wars, the casualties of war, and his father, the commander of the U.S. Navy. It was interesting when we were on Kauai how Brian chose the most risky, I think, thing to do. While we went off snorkeling and the parents went off ziplining, which I thought was fairly brave, he got on a helicopter and he got to see the thrill ride of his life. Way to go, Brian. I digress. But now I'd like to refocus on Brian's fascination with World War II. This brings me to the next part of what I want to say about Brian. And this may be one of the toughest parts. I'm going to use an analogy that I think Brian would appreciate. Brian was a survivor, 1 out of 20, who survived a battle that had a higher death rate than even Omaha Beach at the D-Day Normandy landing. I tried to look up the stats about D-Day, the number of survivors versus the number of casualties, and even these numbers do not approach the rates that Brian battled. The stats had somewhat muddy figures when it comes to the statistics about D-Day, and the historians admit they will never know the true numbers. 12,000 soldiers stormed Omaha Beach in the first wave, and there's 9,387 soldiers buried at Omaha Beach Graveyard. That's roughly, on the math, 22%. But if you count the second wave, it's probably even higher survival rate than that. The Axis German soldiers' numbers, surprising, were only 15% survival rate. So you see, Brian's battle in his war had a much steeper death rate than even the worst beach at D-Day. Just to be clear, we'd like to get the story straight for everybody so they understand. The family and close friends would like everyone to know, just for the record, that Brian did not die from his cancer. He survived these various battles. He actually died from other complications associated with his last surgery. Brian never wanted the cancer to define him. What really defines Brian is his unbridled optimism throughout his life, his bravery with the fight, his swagger and charm, and his ability to put people at ease with his humor, even with the extreme odds he was facing. I know I'm going over 5 minutes, but I got one more paragraph. This is the hardest one for me. So the last thing I would like to say is that Brian's favorite animal was the eagle. Brian and Hope are, as I like to say, 164th Yaqui Indians, since Bob's grandmother was Yaqui. I like to call them the albino Yaqui tribe. So keep looking up to see if you can see an eagle or a hawk or any other bird of prey in the next few weeks, and around March 20th, which just happens to be the vernal equinox or first day of spring, the day Brian passed on. Because that may be Brian's spirit floating up there, watching over you. Look for the feathers. Those may just be Brian's. A strong-willed member of the albino Yaqui tribe. I love you, bro.
My man, Brian. Oh, buddy, I am going to miss your great sense of humor, your contagious smile, and how you can make the best of a situation. In one word, you were fun. But I would like to focus on some of your other qualities that I admire: honor, love, and hope. When Brian was diagnosed with cancer, he didn't cry and run away from it. He attacked it with bravery. He had dignity. He did not feel sorry for himself. He was determined to win. He was so determined to win, he got his 5% tattoo put on. And I think that says so much about my friend Brian. During this process, he inspired me and so many others. This helped all of us learn how to overcome challenges in life. Everyone here is a testament to the man Brian became. Mr. Archibald, Brian learned honor from you. And in turn, he honored you by inspiring others. Thank you for teaching your son honor. Love. Brian had tremendous love for his mom, like most sons. Where his relationship with his mom might have been a little bit different is that he confided his hopes, his sorrows, and his disappointments with her. He respected her wisdom and often put that into action. He loved to spend Sunday dinners with her, no matter what the score of the 49er game was. And he enjoyed taking half-day vacations to take his mom on a movie date. Getting to know Mrs. Archibald better, it has become very clear that Brian learned love from his mother. That love was evident in the relationship he had with me and many of you. Mrs. Archibald, thank you for teaching your son love. I remember many years ago getting a call on a Saturday at 7 o'clock in the morning. When I saw the caller ID, it was Brian. My first thought was, why is Brian up at 7 o'clock calling me, knowing he was probably having a good time the night before? When I picked up the phone, he told me his wife wanted a divorce. This caused tremendous pain for Brian, and ultimately, he closed himself off from other women, not letting them get too close. This went on for many years. I worried Brian would not have the experience of the wonderful emotion of love. Fortunately, he met Katie. Katie is the only woman that Brian has introduced to his mother since his divorce. Katie, I am so grateful Brian was able to experience love and share his finest qualities with you. Thank you. Hope. Hope is perhaps Brian's greatest quality. It helped him overcome his life challenges, how that never give up attitude, and shaped his outlook on life, which allowed him to share his smiles, make us laugh, and support us through the tough times. Hope is also his sister. I had a wonderful opportunity to see a lot of Brian's childhood photos, and it was very apparent that Hope and Brian had a special relationship. He loved you and admired you. Hope was more than a sister, she was his symbol. A symbol of love, determination, and faith. Thank you for being Brian's hope. Lastly, I'd like to talk about friendship. The best way I can describe my friendship with Brian is by comparing it to my favorite book, Lonesome Dove. The two main characters in Lonesome Dove were Gus, who would represent Brian, and Captain Call, who would represent me. Two very different men on the outside, much like Brian and myself. But like Gus and Captain Call, we shared together a bond of loyalty, honesty, admiration, respect, and love. Brian was accepted as a son by my parents, an uncle to my daughters, a confidant to my wife. He was my friend. Brian wasn't perfect, but he was amazing. My wish is that each of you have a friendship like Brian and I shared. Mr. and Mrs. Archibald, thank you for Brian. I cannot express in words what he meant to me. I am grateful to call him my friend and truly admired how he honored his father, loved his mother, and always lived with hope. Brian, I love you, and I will miss you dearly, but thank you.
scared little brother with glasses, and me as kindergarten escort. Annoying little brother on my side of the back seat. He's touching me. Camping brother, sleeping end to end in our tent. John Wayne impersonator brother, who met his idol. Scout brother, who won the Ladmo bag. Sports brother, who kept dad driving around to games. Mama's boy brother, who proclaimed himself the favored child. Ladies' man brother, hitting on my friends. Comedian brother, whose funniest lines were about himself. Selfless brother, who kept a secret at our wedding. Brave brother, who made the nurses laugh, defying the odds. All my brothers, always.